Type 2, integral of sine raised to nu cosine raised to mu, derivative of the function u, is now that the exponent this time for type 2 transformation, such as your n or m, this time are all positive, even. These are now positive, even integers. So kung kahapon, odd integers from type 1, ang applicable identities was sine squared plus cosine squared is simply equal to 1, and so forth and so long. This time, if now your integrand has an exponent of even integers, especially sine and cosine, these are now the applicable identities for this type of trigonometric functions. So sine squared should now be equal to 1 minus cosine 2 theta all over 2. Cosine squared theta is simply equal to 1 plus cosine 2 theta all over 2. And lastly, sine 2 theta is now 2 sine theta cosine theta. So kung even ang ating integers, ito yung pwede nating gamiting identities to transform our given integrand. So for that, or with that said, let's try an example involving type 2 transformation of trigonometric functions. So what if you're now asked to evaluate the indefinite integral of sine squared y dy? Nababasa po kahit papaano yung sulat?
Yes, sir.
Do I need to zoom it up? Or sakto lang? Para makita natin yung identities. So remember, ang rule ni type 2, the integrand or the trigonometric function should have an even positive integers. It is a positive integer and it is also an even integer. So pwede nating directly i-apply yung transformation in terms of identities. So sine squared is basically 1 minus cosine 2y all over 2 dy. Simplify further, introduce lang natin si antiderivative integral sign with our terms dy minus 1/2 of cosine 2y dy. Okay? Ito, immediately we can integrate that as 1/2 y, right? But this one, identify natin yung ating function, that is 2y. du is our 2 dy. So we'll need to apply a correcting factor equal to 1/2 du to our integrand minus 1/2 times another 1/2 integral of cosine 2y dy all over y. So makakancel na yung over 2y, makakancel na yan. Ay, makakancel na yung 2. Makakancel na yung ating 2. So basically, you end up integrating only cosine. The integral of cosine, anong integral ng cosine from kahapon? Is simply sine 2y plus your integration constant. So yan na yung ating final answer for this first example problem. Madali pa lang naman yung example, no? Now, what if you're now asked to evaluate the indefinite integral of cosine raised to the 4th y over 2 dy? Notice that it is also a positive even integers. But based on our available identities applicable for transformation type 2, wala tayong pwedeng gamitin to replace cosine raised to the 4th. Lahat yan raised to the 2. So basically, expand natin yung ating term or yung ating function. In terms now, to cosine squared y over 2 is just the same as multiplying it to cosine squared y over 2 dy. Diba? Parehas lang naman kung ganyan. Or, it's just the same as cosine squared y over 2 raised to 2 dy. Diba? Ganun din. To simplify further, we know that the equivalent identity of cosine squared theta is simply 1 plus cosine 2 theta all over 2. Introduce natin yon, 1 plus cosine, ano yan, 2 theta, 2 times 2y. Tama ba? 2 times 2y, that is now equal to what? Cosine y all over 2 squared. Para mas madali nating makita yung susunod, expand natin. Ilabas natin si 1/2 square. Then, it is just the same as 1 plus cosine y squared dy. Parehas lang naman, di ba? Both of them are still in the exponent of 2. So basically, simplify that. There is now 1/4 integral of 1 plus cosine y squared dy. Simplify further. Introduce natin or expand natin yung ating exponent. That is now 1 plus 2 cosine y plus cosine squared y dy. Right? Introduce na natin yung ating integral sign. Mamaya na yung 1/4. Iwan lang natin yan dyan. Dy plus 2 integral of cosine y dy. So both of that can be easily integrated as it is. But we also have here cosine squared y, which is also carries a positive even integers. Again, let's transform that term. 1 plus cosine 2y over 2 dy. 1/4 integral of dy plus 2 integral of cosine y dy plus 1/2 integral of dy plus 1/2 integral of cosine 2y dy. Diba? Masyadong mahaba ang pinapakita ko lang step by step. Baka sabihin nyo, pwede namang direkta na ni sir, ang tagal-tagal. Pakita natin, baka yung iba hindi nakaka-follow ng mabilisan, ano? So, distribute natin yung ating 1/4 or simply integrate muna natin yung nasa parentheses. Let's integrate first within the parentheses. What's within the parentheses? That is a y. That is now, what? 2 sine y plus 1/2 y plus 1/2 plus 1/2. Saan nakuha yung isang 1/2? That is cosine 2y. So, mag-introduce tayo ng correcting factor na 1/2. So, that is now 1/4 sine 2y, then your plus c. Then, introduce your 1/4. Simplify muna natin. Tawag na dito, y plus 1/2 is what? Times 1/4 is simply 3/8 of y. 1/4 times 1/2 times 2, that is 1/2 sine y. 1/4 times 1/4, that is 1/16 sine 2y plus your integration constant. So, yan na ngayon yung ating final answer. Mahaba lang yung solution, pero, di ba, nakikita nyo kung saan kinukuha yung bawat transformation na nangyayari. So, kung sa quizzes and exam, ganyan din po ang inyong gagawin. Unless, kung gusto nyo, kung meron kayong mas maikling solution, please be sure that you can prove your solution is correct. Explain nyo sa akin kung bakit naging ganon yung solution nyo. Paano nyo napalabas yung answer? How did it go like that? Parang ganon. Now, nakuha po yan. Burahin ko na. Now, what if you are now asked to evaluate the indefinite integral of sine squared x times cosine squared x dx, right? Paano pag ganyan? Hindi yan negative, ah. That is sine squared x times cosine squared x. Based from our identities, both of them has a positive even integers. Then both of them has also their own equivalent identities based on type 2. If we then use our identities beforehand already, that is 1 minus cosine 2x over 2 is also the same as 1 plus cosine 2x over 2. Ngayon, hahaba yung trabaho mo. Expand mo ulit yan, distribute mo yung 1/2, expand, and napakahaba yung magiging answer mo dyan. But we also know that sine squared x times cosine squared x can also be expressed as sine x times cosine x squared, right? Dx. Ganun din lang, di ba? From our original form. It's just the same. Di ba? Then we know from our identities that sine 2 theta is simply equal to 2 sine theta times cosine theta. Or sine 2 theta all over 2 is equal to sine theta times cosine theta. Notice the similarity with our problem. So meaning, we can express this integrand as sine 2 theta all over 2 squared, 2 theta, 2x all over 2 raised to 2 dx. Diba? Diba? Distribute natin yung ating square. That is now sine squared 2x all over 4 dx. Labas natin si constant, 1/4 of sine squared 2x dx. So we can then apply another transformation of identities such that sine squared theta is equal to 1 minus cosine 2 theta all over 2. Distribute natin yon. That is 1/4 integral 1 minus cosine. Anong ilalagay ko? 2 theta, 2x pa rin ba? Or what? 4x. Siyempre, 4x. Meron na tayong 2x doon. So, 2 times 2, that is now 4x. But still, all over 2 dx. Introduce natin yung ating integral sign. 1/4 times 1/2 is, mamaya na lang yan, 1/2 of 1 minus cosine 4x dx. So, that is 1/8 of dx minus 1/8 of cosine 4x dx. Diba? Then, 1/8x. Correcting factor, makukuha natin dyan, 4x du 4dx. Correcting factor of 1/4 du. So, 1/8 times 1/4. Integral of cosine is positive sign 4x plus c. Simplify further, that is now 1/8x minus 1/8 times 1/4 is 1 over. Yan. 1/8 times 1/4. 4 times 8, 32 of sine 4x plus c. So, yan na yung ating final answer. Kaya, dali lang. Huwag masyadong maging excited when it comes to identities, kagaya sa part na yan. Transform mo kaagad yung iyong identities, pero meron palang ibang solution. So, mapapahaba ngayon yung iyong solution later on. So, explore the possibilities when it comes to transforming identities. Question po?
None, sir.
Now, for your fourth problem, ito medyo matatagalan tayo dito ha. Evaluate the indefinite integral of sine of sine 2y times cosine raised to the 6y dy. Again, evaluate the indefinite integral of sine 2y times cosine raised to the 6y dy. Paano yan ngayon? Now, we can express this particular integrand or this problems the same as sine 2y cosine 2y times cosine 4 y dy. Ba, parehas lang. It's just the same for cosine squared times cosine fourth is just the same as cosine raised to the 6th power. Such that we know from our last example that sine y, squared y times cosine squared y can also be expressed as sine times cosine raised to 2 then times cosine 4y dy. Nakikita nyo na yung possible solution. Then we already know that sine y cosine y based on our identities kanina can also be expressed as sine 2y over 2 then raised to 2 cosine 4y dy, right? Simplify further, that is now 1/4 of sine squared 2y. And cosine raised to the 4th y dy is the same as the product of cosine squared times cosine squared. Without further ado, we can already transform that using our known identities for even integers. That is cosine, what? 2y over 2 squared dy. Para makita nyo, yan yung cosine squared y times cosine squared y or simply cosine squared y squared. So, yun din lang, ba? Cosine squared has an equivalent identities of 1 plus cosine 2 theta over 2. Then, meron pa siyang exponent na 2, so raise natin siya sa 2. Yeah? Yeah. Subtract natin ulit yung ating 1/4. Sine squared 2y. 1/2 raised to the 2 is 1/4 plus, times 1 plus cosine 2 theta 2y squared dy. Expand. Mamaya ko na i-distribute yung constant ha para makita natin kung saan natin gagawin ng maayos. 1 plus 2 cosine 2y plus cosine squared 2y dy. Okay? Kunin na natin yung ating constant na 1/4. That is already 1/16. Mamaya natin siya i-distribute. Distribute natin si sine doon sa ating open close parenthesis na terms. So that is now integral of sine squared y plus what? 2y pala yun. 2y plus 2 cosine 2y of sine squared 2y plus sine plus cosine squared 2y times sine squared 2y dy. Okay? Isa-isahin natin. Distribute natin si integral sign. Huwag niyong kakalimutan si 1/16 ha. Integral sign. Sine squared 2y dy plus 2 integral of cosine 2y sine squared 2y dy plus integral of cosine squared 2y times sine squared 2y dy. Notice the common terms with each of these integrants. Pwede nating i-integrate yung iba na dyan, then transform ulit yung isang term. So with this one, we can transform that as what? That is also expressed as 1 minus cosine what? 2 times 2, 4y over 2 based on our identities. Isa-isahin ko para makita natin. Then, that is now 1/2. Huwag niyong kakalimutan si 1/16. 1/2 of dy minus 1/2 of cosine 4y dy. That is now 1/2 y minus correcting factor, that is 1/4. So 1/2 times 1/4 is 1/8. Integral of cosine is simply positive sine 4y. So tapos na tayo dito sa first term. Iwan nyo lang yan dyan. Then, dito tayo. We know that if we consider the term sine 2y as our function, main function, we can then evaluate that as 2 cosine or differentiate that at 2 cosine 2y dy. Knowing that cosine 2y dy is also present on our integral, we could always represent or introduce a correcting factor of 1/2 du. So, maka-cancel na siya. Then, integral of that is simply 2 times 1 half. 2 times 1 half is 1. Then, power rules is sine squared to y. That is now 1/3 negative, positive sine, cosine, positive pala yung differential. So, positive. Positive 1 half times 2 is 1. Then, power rule is sine squared to y. That is now sine cube to y. So, ito na yung sa second term. How about the last one? The last one is can also be represented as sine 2y cosine 2y squared dy, right? And can also be represented as sine 4y over 2 squared dy. Diba? Naalala to? Ito. Kung yan ay sine y, cosine y, this one now is sine 2y. So, same goes with this one. Sine 2y times cosine 2y. This will be now sine 4y all over 2. Then, square dy. We'll have now 1/4 of sine squared 4y dy. Apply your identities again. 1/4 of what? That is now 2 times 4. From your known identities, that is 1 minus cosine 2 times 4, 8y all over 2 dy. Labas ulit natin si constant. 1/4 times 1 half. Integral of 1 minus cosine 8y. 8y dy. That is now 1/8 of integral dy minus 1/8 of integral cosine 8y dy. Integral of 1/8 dy is simply 1/8 y minus, anong correcting factor natin dyan? That is also 1/8. So 1/8 times 1/8 is 1 what? 8 times 8 is 64.
64.
Integral of cosine is positive, sine 8y. And lastly, your integration constant. So, meron na tayo nung ating last term. Kunin na natin lahat. That is now 1 half y minus 1/8 sine 4y plus 1/3 sine 3 2y plus 1/8y minus 1 over 64 sine 8y plus c. Will that be our final answer?
No, sir. Meron pa yung 1 over 16.
Yes, very good, sir. Meron pa yung ating 1/16 na iniwan kanina. Pag iniwan, kailangan nating ibalik yon. So, 1/16 times 1 half is simply 1 over 32 y minus 1/16 times 1/8 is 1 over 128 sine 4y. 1/3 times 1/16, that is 1 over 48 sine cube 2y plus 1/8 times 1/16 is 1 over 128y minus 1/16 times 1 over 64 is 1 over 1024 sine 8y plus c. Meron pa tayo 1 over 32y plus 1 over 128y. Ano dyan? Sagot dyan. Plus 1 over 128. That is 5 over 128y minus 1 over 128 sine 4y plus 1 over 48 sine cube 3y minus 1 over 1024 sine 8y plus c. Or, that is also equal to 1 over 128 times 5y minus sine 4y plus 1 over 48 sine cube y, cube 2y minus 1 over 1024 sine 8y plus c. Boom! So, ito ngayon yung ating final answer. Sabog. Nakuha po yan. Hello?
Yes, sir, barely.
Barely. Mahaba lang kasi in-step by step ko siya kaya pagpasensya niya sobrang haba. Okay? Burahin ko na. So for your exercise problem, try to solve these given problems. Integral of sine raised to 6 2y dx, 2x supposed to be 2x dx. Try to solve or evaluate the definite integral of sine raised to 6 2x dx and sine raised to 6y over 2 times cosine raised to 6 times y over 2 dy, and lastly solve sine cube y times 2 minus 3 cosine y cosine y raised to 2 dy. From what we have discussed for transformation by trigonometric formulas under type 2, try to solve these three problems. This will be your exercise. Exercise. Hindi yan assignment ha. Practicean nyo lang. Exercise and try to solve these three problems from what we have learned from type 2 transformation. Okay? Now, isa pa pala. Kulang ng isang problem. Kalimutan ko. Number 8. Last one. Try to solve sine 2x raised to the 4th times cosine 4x dx. Try to solve that on your own, these three problems. Number 5, sine raised to the 6 2x dx. Number 6, sine raised to the 6 sine raised to the 6y over 2. Then cosine raised to the 6y over 2 dy. And number 7, sine raised to 3y times 2 minus 3 cosine y squared dy. Then number 8, sine 2x 4 cosine raised to the 4th x dx. Pag-practice nyo o pagtulungan nyo na kung sinong makasolve. Yan. Ganito na lang. Let's give a challenge. Whoever solve these 4 problems and prove their solutions to be correct, hindi ko pwedeng gawin yun 4 problems, and whoever solved them first and proved their solutions to me can be exempted to the first quiz.